Marriage is an institution of God.
What about those who don't believe in God? Will their union also constitute a marriage?
People don't know. So they think marriage is marriage.
And so if tomorrow the law says that a man and a tree can form a union,
okay,
that will be a valid marriage.
My name is Matilda Boate-Nati, and you are watching Legal Agenda. Today we'll be looking at the fascinating and often complex topic, which is fake marriages in Ghana. We'll be exploring the dynamics and consequences of fake marriages, and we'll take a look at the various reasons behind such decisions and the ripple effects they may have on individuals and the society. To help me discuss this very important topic, I have Reverend John Kato. He's a counselor and resident pastor for SEM. And I have Sena Hoto. He's a private legal practitioner. So I will start with Reverend. Reverend, what is marriage in the first place?
Marriage is an institution ordained of God, where two people come together for a common purpose and to do more than what one person could have done. Secondly, it is for the recreational and reproductive assignment God has given to man. So marriage is an institution of God. Okay. And then it is also given to man for the reproduction and the replenishing of the earth.
So if I understand you, so marriage is between a man and a woman.
Yes.
I will come back to that,
yes,
because of
yes,
the same-sex marriage, yes, and all those
yes,
things happening. But lawyer, can we say that a particular marriage is not valid under the law?
Yes, we can. But that, before fully disposing of that question,
all right,
Reverend has dealt with what marriage is.
Yeah.
But from the legal perspective, what marriage is different,
okay,
from what he's also described.
Okay.
Marriage from a legal perspective is a creature of statute.
Okay.
And so marriage is what the law says it is.
Okay.
And so if tomorrow the law says that a man and a tree can form a union,
okay, that
will be a valid marriage. So in addition to what Reverend describes, because it's a very jurisprudential question, the question and the issues that will pop up with is it's a union ordained by God. What about those who don't believe in God? Will their union also constitute a marriage?
Yeah.
And so for every state or every country, the laws within that country define what is acceptable as a union between one and the other, so that same laws within the country prescribe what we call the validity requirements.
Okay. So
that there are the substantive requirements and then the procedural requirements that you must meet in order for your marriage to be valid or legally recognized. And if you don't meet those requirements,
okay,
albeit one or the other or even all, then your marriage, even though you may have had all the fanfare with all the photographs and all of that, will not be legally recognized, okay, so that where there's an issue, you obtain the benefits that the law attaches to such a marriage.
Okay, so can you take us through some of the things, requirements that people need to do before? Because it seems that most often now, a lot of people are celebrating marriages, the fanfare that accompanies it, but they don't really delve into some of these requirements that are needed for their marriages to be valid under the law. So if you can take us through
exactly
that.
You know, when you look at that union called marriage, you're looking at it from the legal point of view, where some of the key requirements are that one, it must be between a man and a woman. So hopefully the LGBT Act that is being passed may add some flesh to
Okay.
some of these provisions here under the Marriages Act or the Matrimonial Causes Act and then all of that.
Okay.
But for now, the marriage as envisaged by the Marriages Act and the Matrimonial Causes Act, amongst all the laws that regulate that space, is between a man and a woman.
Okay.
So that if you marry any other person other than a man or a woman, then that marriage will be void. So we have what we say voidable and void. So when it is void, it means that it is wrong even from the word go. If you say it's voidable, it means that it is wrong it is right until you take steps to set that aside. So the parties involved is one of the crucial aspects. Again, you cannot marry on what we call consanguinity. So somebody that you are related to by blood. So you cannot marry your sister, you cannot marry your brother, you cannot say that, okay, your dad took so good care of you and you are attached to your father and so you want to marry your father or you want to marry your mother.
Okay.
If you do that, that marriage will not be recognized by law. And not only that, it also forms a crime.
Okay.
And so that aspect also is there, the consanguinity, the relationship between the man and the woman, amongst others. There's quite a list over there. That automatically makes that marriage void. Now, there are certain aspects of it where you must take steps to ensure that those are done before that marriage is valid.
Okay.
So, for example, before we started the show, we're having a conversation on you just seeing somebody having a marriage at the beach, and then the next morning you wake up and tell your fiancé, hey honey, I want us to have our wedding at let's not advertise any beach, but some beach somewhere.
Some beach.
Okay.
And then the following day afterward, you call your friends and family and you are there, and then they've signed documents and you think you're married. I'm here to tell you that that marriage is not valid.
Okay.
You understand? Simply because where you marry must be gazetted and registered, recognized under law.
Okay.
The person who officiates the marriage, whether the person is a pastor or a priest or a bishop or an archbishop, whichever the nomenclature is,
Alright.
the person must have been gazetted
Okay.
by law and given the power to do or perform that. If you're going to do it in church, the church must also be gazetted.
Okay.
So you can have, for example, I'm a member of the Catholic Church, so I can speak at least to that almost all of the parishes, all the churches have been gazetted. So you can have it in any parish and then it will be, valid. And as part of the ordination process and then all of that, the priests are also given that power to be able to bless marriage subject to the internal processes of the church.
Okay.
So that is also one of the requirements you must look out for. Then when you want to start the process, depending on which type of marriage you want to have and the approach you want to use, either you are going to have your marriage blessed in church, or you are going to go to the registrar's office, the marriage registrar's office, to have it, validated and then sign. You'd go and then sign, and everything will be okay. There are requirements that you must meet.
Okay.
There are a number of days that you must do what we call publication of banns.
Okay.
And so that's why for those that go to church, you would find out that they will call the parties in front and then ask the entire church, or introduce first of all to the entire congregation, and then ask the church that if you have any reason why these two should not be married, you must notify the church. In law, we're saying that you must file a caveat.
Okay.
And so if you wait for that 21-day period requirements by law, and then you file your caveat, you're essentially wasting your time. So on the day of the ceremony, you cannot raise an objection.
Yeah.
Okay.
It will go on, and then when you feel you have any other objection, you can go to court.
But let me ask Reverend, based on what you just said, I mean, during the day, the day that they are celebrating the marriage, you still ask the couple.
Yes.
If per what lawyer is saying
Yes.
that, why should you ask the couple? Because they are celebrating the marriage. The law allows them to also decide at the last minute that they don't want to go ahead with the marriage ceremony.
Yes. The law still permits them before they exchange the vows for the marriage officer, who may be the priest, the bishop, or whoever is conducting the marriage, officiating the marriage, to declare them by law. And according to the ordinance of the church, declare them husband and wife. You ask them their final consent.
Their final consent.
So what that we read before we ask them to face each other, join their right hands together and say this after you, is just to get their final consent. So then when you read all that, then you ask them, is there any impediment to we putting you together as husband and wife? Then we go ahead to say, if there is no impediment, say no impediment. Meaning, if there is an impediment, say yes, there is an impediment. We pause. Go aside, listen to your reason for not wanting to go ahead with the marriage. And then, if it's something that can be, handled by the church and the family, because your witnesses will be present. And most of the time, the witnesses present are the parents of the two people entering into that marriage. So if it's something that can be handled and the marriage can continue, we do so. If we have to pause and announce to the congregation gathered that we cannot go ahead and that we apologize, they should go, they will hear from us whether a new date will be set or whatever, we do so. It is better that way than to force them to proceed and later go and dissolve the marriage. No, nobody wants that record attached to them. So it's better not to proceed.
Lawyer Sena mentioned that as a pastor who is officiating a marriage ceremony, you have to be gazetted.
Yes.
And now we see so many men or so many people
officiating
marriages. It seems that in Ghana, I don't know whether it's because of unemployment, but a lot of people have been called by God. And so, and they keep blessing or officiating marriages.
Yes.
And I don't know whether they know that the law requires them to be gazetted. So if they don't, they are not gazetted, and they are blessing people's marriages. What is the effect?
It's you see, we don't ask questions. Sometimes, depending on the culture where you were brought up, it's as if when you go and ask some questions, you are becoming problematic, or so to say, you are becoming too known. But you should ask questions. If you want to bless marriage in your church, you have every right to ask your pastor whether the church, that is the center where you will be celebrating the marriage, is gazetted as a marriage celebration center where marriage can be constituted. Secondly, whether the pastor or any pastor among, because most of the time it's not all the pastors. In my church, we have a lot of pastors. We have a lot of reverend ministers. Our culture is that once you are ordained as a reverend minister, we get you gazetted both as a reverend minister and as a marriage officer, so that the state certifies you to officiate marriages. But not every pastor can officiate a marriage. But because people don't ask, secondly, because people lack knowledge, they go ahead. Because there are churches, the pastors don't even know there is something called gazetting. There are churches who have not even registered
their center.
Thank you. They've not registered a center. They've not registered a brand. So the church is not even registered, let alone to go ahead to register the place. Because most of the time, if you go to Registrar General and you register your church, most churches are registered as a limited liability company or limited by guarantee. So if you register, one help you get is that they will advise you, if you want to be blessing marriages, then do this registration also, which is also done at the Registrar General. So you also register your church venue as a marriage celebration center where you can bless marriages. And then you, the pastor, you get registered and gazetted as a marriage officer. People don't know. So they think marriage is marriage. I just want to marry. I found a woman. I found a man. We found ourselves. We go to a pastor. Pastor bless us and declares husband and wife. But we live in a state. Laws govern us, our lives, our way of life, govern every institution. And the marriage is also an institution. So we are governed by the law. The state takes responsibility of every marriage. You understand? Your children that comes out of the marriage. And whatever the marriage brings, the state takes responsibility. So the state must recognize the marriage as such. So we have to ask questions. We have to ask questions. Your bishop cannot just assign any other pastor to bless your marriage. You have the right. There are issues where I've heard some of my senior colleagues tell me that they went to a place to officiate a wedding, and somebody walked to him to ask them, please, are you gazetted? And where you are blessing the marriage, is it gazetted? Because you can be gazetted to bless marriage, but you can bless marriage at the wrong place. And still, the marriage by law will not be valid.
Okay. We'll go for a short break. We'll be right back.
Everyone needs the perfect snack to munch on during a fun moment. Wow. Enjoy the tasty McBerry Twist cupcakes, deliciously baked and packaged for a sweet treat. Premium quality cakes baked with love for all, enriched in butter and milk.
Yummy. Oh,
McBerry Twist cupcakes, simply irresistible. Try one today. This advert is FDA approved.
Welcome back. You have been watching Legal Agenda. We've been discussing fake marriages. Before we went for the break, we mentioned that you have to be gazetted for a particular church. Okay, so Reverend, I will come to you. You realize that most often people, because the couple are coming from different churches, most often mostly the men.
Yeah.
I want my bishop to come and officiate the marriage in the ladies' church.
Okay.
So how do we handle this since it's not valid because you are only gazetted for your church? And we see that happening most of the time.
Lawyer did not say it's not valid. You remember he said he will cross-check. Once you are gazetted on a church's registration, so like me, I was gazetted on the Certificate of Charismatic Evangelistic Ministry, but then I am a marriage officer of the Republic of Ghana.
Okay.
Yes, so I can go to another church, but the proper thing to do, which we practice, is that if I go to another church because a member from my church is marrying a member from that church, is that there must be a resident minister, a minister of that church, co-officiating with me.
Okay.
So the minister from that church will take the couple through the vows. Then possibly I can pray for them and possibly preach.
Okay.
But for the vows, a resident minister or a minister of that denomination, that church, must be the one to take them through the vows.
Okay.
If the person brings his or her bishop to come and take them through the vow, it doesn't make it null and void.
Okay.
because the person is still a marriage officer of the Republic. You understand? But signing the certificate, which is the evidence of a contracted marriage, must be by both parties.
Okay.
A pastor from the church must have their certificate on the certificate, their signature on the certificate to make it valid. The visiting minister who the parties involved in the marriage desired for the person to come and take them through the vows should not be the only one to sign, because this certificate is to a church. Once you are not recognized by that church, you cannot only sign a certificate that they will have to answer to when something comes up. Because if this certificate appears in any court, they will invite the marriage officer who signed to come and identify their signature. And you know the certificate has a certificate number. And the certificate number is my church's, a number that is specific to my church. So if they bring the certificate, my church certificate number is what is written on it. But the pastor whose signature is on it is not a pastor of my church. It's not proper. It's not proper. So like this one, there are two signatures there. This is mine. And this is the certificate from my church. So then I can answer to it.
And because we are discussing fake marriages,
yes, please.
You know, a lot of people too, because of traveling opportunities, they are able to, procure some of these certificates. And even sometimes, some men, I'm not being biased here, I'm sorry, but some men, because they want to deceive the women or deceive the particular woman they are contracting the marriage with, come out and, I don't know how they're able to do it. They get the certificates, but at the end of the day, when issues come up in the marriage and they are in court, you realize that the marriage was not...
There was no marriage from the beginning.
Actually, yeah. So what can we know, or what should we know with regards to the certificate? What should we look out for to know that this certificate is an original certificate which shows that indeed the marriage is valid under law, and this certificate is not valid? And so when you go to court, it will not be recognized that your marriage was recognized in the first place according to...
So I have some certificate here. You know, to begin with, lawyer was speaking about the legal aspect where you have to announce the banns of marriage for 21 days.
Yes.
Where the church, we use 3 weeks, 3 Sundays. Yes, that is how we do it. So we call the people forward and then we announced. But before we announced, even in church, or we start the first announcement, you must go to the assembly where the marriage will be celebrated, or where you are staying, and tell the assembly your intention to marry. You will fill a form which will be the band's announcement for the whole world to know, because they have a way they do it. They put it on their notices. They sometimes put it on other platforms that people will know, especially people within your vicinity will know that you have the intention of marrying so and so a person. So it is one of the parties or both that must go to the assembly, but at least one person of the two must be the one to go to the assembly. You go, you fill a form. Then after 21 days, they will give you this certificate. This one is a temporary certificate that expires after 3 months. And it is indicated on it that the marriage that will be done at the church or whichever venue chosen by the couple must be celebrated within that 3 months. So the date of the issue of the certificate is stated up. Then at the bottom, it is stated that this certificate will be void unless the marriage is solemnized on or before the 13th, so this one is stated here, 13th day of July, then the year is there. So if by the 13th of July, the marriage was not celebrated, this certificate is void. If you fix another date, you must go back to the assembly for another banns, to begin the whole process again. This certificate will be issued to you. Okay, so when this certificate is issued to you, you don't celebrate it within the stipulated time and it expires, but you still go ahead and marry. And the date stated on this one is out of the stipulated time on this one. Is null and void. This one is not valid because we will go back and submit, because this one comes in twos. So you give one to the couple, you take the second copy together with the expired certificate and go and lodge it at the assembly. So this one was done at La Nkwanta Madina Municipal Assembly. So I take this one, I add it to it and send it to La Nkwanta. If it was done at Adentan Municipal, I take the original one that does not expire and add it to it and go to Adentan. So depending on the assembly that issued this certificate, that is where you lodge the unexpired one, the one that does not expire. Secondly, it is the assembly where you did the ban's announcement that generates the license number. So the license number stated, mostly it is written with a different ink. Sometimes it is written with the same ink. But they will generate it and write it. Then it will be transferred to the original one that does not expire until nullified by the court. Then it is written at the top, license number. The church where, or the venue where the marriage was celebrated, if it is gazetted, they are empowered to generate the certificate number. And the certificate numbers follows each other, depending on the time, the date that the previous marriage was celebrated. The next one follows after it like that. So they generate the certificate number. And if you look at the certificate number and the license number, it always has the month and the year stated in it. So it starts with the municipal assembly or the district assembly that announce the bans. It starts with their initials. They all have their own unique initials. Then they state the number of the marriage at that time. And then, so maybe this one, 2024, this marriage was the 29th marriage celebrated that year. That the marriage that they have announced that year. So 29th marriage for that year. The month is January. And then the year is 2024. So they have a way they write it, and that generates the license number. This one was also blessed or celebrated at CEM, Charismatic Evangelistic Ministry. We have a way we generate. So instead of writing Charismatic Evangelistic Ministry, we decided to use CEM. So if it's ICGC, International Central Gospel Church, they may choose to use ICGC. Then they put the marriage number that they are celebrating. So this marriage celebrated is the 947th marriage celebrated in the church. So we put it there and then we put the year. So that is our certificate number. These two numbers are very important. Very, very, very important. So if the certificate you are being issued, the number does not depict any municipal, district, or metropolitan assembly, it is null and void. Then where did you announce your bans? Secondly, if the certificate number cannot be pointed to any particular registered center
Okay.
for blessing of marriage,
Okay.
then it is questionable.
All right.
So you look out for these two. Then the third one is the person that celebrated the marriage or blessed the marriage. The person that led the couple to exchange the vow and pronounce them husband and wife. If the person is gazetted by the state. So when we are declaring them husband and wife, one important statement we make is by the authority vested in me as a minister of the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by the gazetting or the certification as a marriage officer by the republic or by the state, because maybe you may be in the US, so the laws vary from state to state.
Sure.
But if I said by the state and I was standing in New York State, that means that I am declaring you husband and wife based on the laws of New York State.
Sure.
So it is a very important statement the person declaring you husband and wife must make.
Okay.
So by the power or the authority vested in me by the church and by the state, I now pronounce you husband and wife. And from then, once I'm gazetted as a marriage officer,
Okay.
and you are blessing your marriage at the registered center, and you have gone through the process of announcing the banns of marriage, and the certificate number has been issued to you, you are married.
Okay.
You are recognized everywhere as marriage officer. And the one that declared you husband and wife must be the one to sign.
Okay.
After all parties have appended their signatures, their names, the date, their status as at the time declared, whether they were divorced, it must be stated.
Okay.
If they were single, it must be stated. If they were spinsters, bachelors, you state it.
Okay.
Their profession is also stated. If they were teachers, bankers, pastor, lawyer, you state it. So after all the required spaces are filled, then these three things
Okay.
makes the certificate authentic and genuine.
Okay.
If any of this is missing, the certificate is not valid.
Okay.
It's not valid. If the person who blessed is gazetted by the state, ordained, permitted to bless marriage, but you did not do the bands for the license number to be generated for you, it is still not valid. If the license number was generated for you with a different information, because when you go, they will ask you where you are going to celebrate the marriage. And the assemblies have all registered venues for marriage in their system.
Okay.
So when you tell them, they will check
Okay.
and find out whether that place has the gazette
Okay.
or has been gazetted or registered as a venue that you can use to celebrate marriage
Okay.
before even they generate the license number. So if you told them you are celebrating at CEM, and so they checked their system, you are good, you are cleared, it's a registered place, you can celebrate marriage there. So they generated the license number for you. But you ended up celebrating the marriage at another venue. That is not,
At the beach.
thank you.
Garden.
It is not, it makes it null and void. Because then CEM cannot put their certificate number there.
Let me add something to that before we go on. It's not all the time that you need publication of bands
Okay.
if you need to get married.
Okay.
Because you're doing publication of bands because maybe you're doing the ceremony in church.
Okay.
But there is an exception to that law,
Okay.
that rule that we call special license.
All right.
So you can apply to the
special
registrar
license.
for a special license
Okay.
that is in two categories. A special license for the venue and then a special license to dispense off with
Or the other.
some of the requirements, the procedural requirements for the validity of marriage.
Okay.
And so if you have gone through that and then you have obtained that license.
Okay.
It doesn't take away the fact that the marriage has to be celebrated by a licensed, registered person.
Okay.
So when you obtain that license and then you go to the registry, then they'll generate the license number and then the
Okay.
certificate number for you. And then the place where you have agreed, maybe you want to have the marriage in your house.
Yeah.
You have a plush, beautiful house, and so you want to have it there. You want to do what in Ghana we call the engagement, which is a valid full marriage as far as I'm concerned. You want to do the engagement and then the marriage, everything in your father's living room. But your father's living room is not licensed for a marriage, so you obtain through a process a special license that will allow that ceremony to be performed there, and also would allow you to dispense off with some of those requirements.
Thank you, gentlemen. And today we've had Reverend John Kato. He's a counselor and resident pastor for SEM, and Lawyer Sena Hoto, who is a private legal practitioner. We discussed what the institution called marriage is. We looked at the few types. We just looked at the 2 types of marriages, and we also discussed the requirements that is needed for your marriage to be valid under the eyes of the law. And so we hope that you've learned something, and so we'll come to your way again next week. This has been Legal Agenda, and my name is Matilda Boatinati. Thank you.